They said I was just the help, the woman who cooked his meals and disappeared into the kitchen. But he tasted something in my food that money couldn't buy. My grandmother's secrets, my pain, my truth. And that taste, it changed everything. This is how a billionaire fell for a woman he was never supposed to see. Before we start, if you believe that real love sees beyond color, beyond money, beyond what society tells us is possible, hit that subscribe button and stay till the end, because what happened between us will shake everything you thought you knew about love. Now let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Lena Thompson, and 3 years ago I was working 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. I was a private chef during the day, catering weddings on weekends, and teaching cooking classes at night. My mama was sick, the medical bills were piling up, and I was exhausted down to my bones. But I kept cooking, because that's what we do, right? We keep going. Cooking was the only thing that made sense to me. It was the language my grandmother taught me back in Mississippi, where every pot of greens told a story and every cornbread recipe held somebody's prayers. When the agency called about a position cooking for William Hayes, I almost said no. I'd heard about him, everybody had. Tech billionaire, 38 years old, never married, completely unreachable. The kind of man who had everything except a reason to smile. They said he'd gone through 12 chefs in 2 years. Too demanding, too cold, impossible to please. But the pay? The pay would cover 3 months of my mama's treatment, so I swallowed my pride, put on my best professional smile, and showed up at his mansion in the hills. That first day, I stood in his kitchen and felt like I'd walked into a museum. Everything was marble and stainless steel, cold and perfect and completely soulless. State-of-the-art equipment that had barely been touched. A kitchen that had never heard laughter or seen a family gathered around the table. It made me sad, honestly. I thought about my grandmother's kitchen with its worn linoleum floors and the smell of bacon grease that never quite left the walls. That kitchen had a heartbeat. This one was just a room. William barely looked at me during our first meeting. His assistant went over the rules. His dietary preferences, his schedule, when to arrive, when to leave. I was to cook, leave the food, and go. Simple, clean, invisible. I nodded and smiled, but inside, something in me resisted. I don't know how to cook without putting my soul into it, and I definitely don't know how to be invisible. That first meal I made for him was my truth on a plate: slow-cooked short ribs with my grandmother's spice blend, creamy cheese grits, collard greens with smoked turkey, and buttermilk biscuits that would make you cry. I brought my own cast-iron skillet because some things you just can't cook in fancy pots. While the food simmered, I thought about my grandmother's hands, about Sunday dinners after church, about everything that Skillet had witnessed over 3 generations. I put all of that into his food. I left his dinner on the table like I was supposed to and went home. The next morning, his assistant called. Mr. Hayes wanted to see me. I thought I was fired. Probably too much flavour for his bland palate. But when I arrived, he was sitting at the kitchen island with the strangest expression on his face. He looked at me, really looked at me for the first time and said, "What did you put in that food?" I told him the truth. My grandmother's love, my mama's strength, and a little bit of Mississippi sunshine. He didn't smile, but something shifted in his eyes. "Make it again," he said. So I did. And the next day. And the day after that. But something unexpected started happening. William stopped leaving when I cooked. He'd come into the kitchen and just sit there watching me work. At first, it made me nervous. I'd catch him staring and I couldn't figure out what he was thinking. Was he judging my techniques? Wondering why he hired some black woman from the South instead of some fancy culinary school graduate? But then he started asking questions, not about ingredients or cooking times, about the stories. "Why do you hum when you stir the pot?" he asked one evening. I'd been humming one of my grandmother's old gospel songs without even realizing it. I told him, "Because my grandmother said happy food tastes better. If you're angry when you cook, people taste that anger. If you're sad, they taste that sadness. So I hummed to put joy into the pot. He sat with that for a long moment, then said quietly, "I don't think anyone's ever cooked me happy food before." Those kitchen conversations became our ritual. He'd come in around 7, loosen his tie, and sit at the counter while I worked. We talked about everything. His lonely childhood with parents too busy building empires to build a family. My memories of poverty that somehow felt richer than his wealth. He told me about board meetings and hostile takeovers, and I told him about the time my grandmother fed our entire neighborhood during a hurricane with nothing but rice, beans, and faith. We were from different planets, but in that kitchen we spoke the same language. I started to see past the cold billionaire mask. William was lonely in a way that money couldn't fix. He'd built this empire, this fortress of success, but he was starving for something real. And me, I was terrified because I was starting to feel something I had no business feeling. Every time he laughed at one of my stories, every time he asked me to teach him how to properly season a pan, every time he looked at me like I was the most fascinating person he'd ever met, I felt my walls cracking. One night, he asked if he could learn to cook, not hire another chef, not take some expensive class, learn from me. I should have said no. I should have kept that professional distance, but I heard myself saying yes, and suddenly we were standing side by side at the stove, my hands guiding his as he learned to fold biscuit dough. He was terrible at it, and we both knew it, but he kept trying. And when our hands touched, when I looked up and saw the way he was looking at me, not at his chef, but at me, Lena, I knew I was in trouble. "Your food has a soul," he said one night, his voice so soft I almost missed it. "I've eaten at every Michelin-starred restaurant in the world, spent thousands on meals I can't even remember. But your food, it tells me who you are. It tells me about strength and survival and joy, even when things are hard. I taste your grandmother's prayers. I taste your mother's courage. I taste you, Lena. And I can't stop thinking about it." I wanted to run. I wanted to protect my heart because I'd been down this road before, not with billionaires, but with men who saw me as temporary, as exotic, as something to try but never to keep. I knew how his world worked. I'd seen enough movies, heard enough stories. The rich white man and the black woman who works for him. That story never ends well for women like me. We're the secret, the phase, the one they don't bring home to mother. But then everything fell apart in the most predictable way. William had business associates over for dinner, the kind of people who measure success by your stock portfolio and judge you by your zip code. I prepared an elaborate meal, and as I served it, I felt their eyes on me. Not seeing Lena the chef, the artist, the woman with dreams. They saw the help. I heard the whispers, the jokes I wasn't supposed to hear. One of them actually said, "Well, William, at least you've got good taste in your staff, even if they're a bit unconventional." William defended me. He told them I was the most talented chef he'd ever met. But I saw the discomfort in his eyes, the way he didn't correct the staff comment, the way he let them reduce me to my function in his life. After they left, I stood in that cold, perfect kitchen, and I cried. Not because I was surprised. I knew better. I cried because for a moment, I'd let myself believe it could be different. I gave my notice the next morning, professional, clean, just like they wanted. William was shocked. He didn't understand. Or maybe he didn't want to. He asked what he could do to make me stay, like this was just a negotiation, just another problem his money could solve. And that's when I lost it. I told him everything, how his world would never accept me as anything more than the help, how I'd heard his friends talk about me like I was invisible, how exhausted I was from always having to be twice as good to be seen as half as worthy. "You taste my soul in my food," I said, my voice shaking with 3 generations of anger and pain. "But can you love me in your world? Can you stand next to me when your friends look down on us?" Can you choose me when it costs you something? He didn't have an answer. So I walked away. 3 weeks later, William showed up at my mama's house. Not with a driver, not with his assistant, just him, standing on our porch in our working-class neighbourhood, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit. My mama answered the door, took one look at him and said, "You must be the fool who let my daughter walk away." I almost laughed despite myself. He asked my mama to teach him to cook. Not me, her. He said he needed to understand where my food came from, where I came from. And my mama, bless her heart, made him work for it. She had him peeling potatoes for hours, taught him the patience it takes to make a proper roux, made him understand that good food can't be rushed or bought. He came back every Sunday for 2 months, learning our recipes, hearing our stories, humbling himself in our kitchen. I watched from a distance, not sure what to believe. Was this another rich man's fantasy? Was he trying to save me with some grand gesture? But then I saw him at the community kitchen where I volunteered, serving food to homeless folks, listening to their stories like they mattered. Because they did. I saw him arguing with his own mother at some charity event, overheard him telling her that he didn't care what her country club friends thought, that he'd found something real and he wasn't letting it go. One evening he called and asked me to come to his house. I almost didn't go, but something in his voice made me curious. When I arrived, the kitchen, that cold, soulless kitchen, was a mess. A beautiful, chaotic mess. And there was William covered in flour, with what looked like the saddest attempt at biscuits I'd ever seen. "I cooked for you," he said, and his hands were actually shaking. "It's terrible. I know it's terrible. But my grandmother used to say that food is love made visible, and I needed you to see, really see, how much I love you." I started crying right there in his kitchen. Not because the food was good. It absolutely wasn't. But because he'd listened. He'd learned. He wasn't trying to buy me or save me or keep me as some secret. He was trying to meet me where I was, to speak my language, to prove that he saw me. All of me. "I can't promise my world won't hurt you," he said, taking my hands in his. "I can't promise there won't be people who judge us, who don't understand, who try to make you feel small, but I can promise that I will stand next to you every single time. I will correct them. I will defend you. I will choose you, Lena, even when it costs me everything, especially when it costs me everything." We opened a restaurant together 6 months later. Not his restaurant that he funded. Our restaurant that we built as equal partners. We called it Grandmother's Table, and we filled it with the kind of food that tells stories, that holds memories, that feeds souls, and not just stomachs. Some of his business associates stopped talking to him. Some people still look at us like we're a scandal waiting to happen. But William keeps his promise. Every single day, he chooses me, and I choose him. Here's what I learned. Love isn't about someone saving you, and it's not about you changing them. Real love is about two people brave enough to see each other's truth, all the messy, complicated, beautiful truth, and choosing each other anyway. William didn't fall for my cooking. He fell for the soul I put into it, for the strength and pain and joy and history that seasoned every dish. And I didn't fall for his money. I fell for the man who was brave enough to leave his world and step into mine, who understood that love isn't about comfort, it's about courage. So that's our story. A black woman chef and a white billionaire. Sounds like a fairy tale, right? But here's the truth. Real love is messy. It's uncomfortable. It demands you face your privilege, your pain, your truth. If this story touched you, if you believe love can cross any divide when it's real, share this video. Comment below about a time you had to fight for love. And subscribe because next week I'm sharing the 3 biggest lessons our relationship taught me about never shrinking yourself for anyone. Don't miss it. Until then, remember, you are worthy of a love that sees all of you.